The idea of investing to retire early has exploded in popularity over the past decade. But according to a study by Vanguard, the way people actually retire is changing. And once you understand that shift, investing for retirement looks very different from what most people imagine. It certainly had that effect on me, and it's completely changed the way I think about investing for retirement. And that's what we'll talk about in this video. Now, don't get me wrong, the thought of reaching financial independence so you can retire whenever you choose is great in theory. But it starts to fall apart when people push the whole concept to extremes. And that's where the FIRE movement comes in. It represents the most intense version of the early retirement mindset. The basic idea is perfectly sensible. Spend less than you earn and invest the difference. And to be honest, that part I fully agree with. But over time, some people have taken it far beyond what most of us would consider realistic or even healthy. You'll see advice about saving and investing 50, 60, even 70% of your income, cutting every cost imaginable, and investing as aggressively as possible in the hope of replacing your salary decades early. And to be fair, this isn't just a FIRE thing. Plenty of people who've never even heard of FIRE still push themselves to retire early at any cost, investing every spare pound, cutting back on everything, and stressing over every tiny financial decision. At that point, it stops being about investing to retire early and becomes chasing a future version of your life while forgetting to live in the present. Now, think about it for a moment. Why do you actually want to retire early? Even if you stop working at 45 or 50, what will you realistically do with all that time? Sure, traveling sounds amazing, and you might do that for a bit, but eventually, even that becomes routine. And the big question is, will walking away from work genuinely make you happier? Interestingly, when you look at what actually happens to people who do retire early, the picture becomes less straightforward. A recent survey found that a lot of retirees are choosing to return to work because they felt bored, lonely, or simply lacked structure. So it does make you pause and wonder, is early retirement really the dream we think it is? Or are we investing so heavily to reach something that might not deliver the happiness we expect? Now, if you're stuck in a role you genuinely dislike or one that drains you, it's completely understandable why early retirement feels like the perfect escape. Wanting out of a stressful or unfulfilling environment is a very human reaction, I get it. But even then, it's worth asking, is early retirement actually solving the problem? Or is it just avoiding it? Because if the real issue is hating your job, then retiring early might not be the only or even the best solution. Sometimes the answer is redesigning your career, not deleting it altogether. And I know someone will say this in the comments. Yeah, but I'm 40, I can't just switch careers now. Retiring early is the only realistic escape. And I get why it feels that way. When you've spent 15 or 20 years in one field, the idea of starting something new seems impossible. But the reality is, people make successful career changes in their 40s and even 50s all the time. 10 years is a long time, long enough to pivot into a different role, retrain, shift into a related field, move to a lower stress job, or redesign your work in a way that's actually sustainable. For some people, the solution isn't retiring early. It's finding work you're not desperate to run away from. And that's why it's worth zooming out and asking a deeper question. Why do we assume early retirement will magically solve everything? Well, one reason for this disconnect comes down to a psychological bias we all have. Something called the focusing illusion. In simple terms, it's the tendency to believe that one specific change in our life, like having more money or retiring early, will massively increase our happiness. We fixate on that one idea and assume it's the magic solution. However, research shows that once your basic needs are met, earning more money does very little to improve life satisfaction. In some cases, it actually increases stress and anxiety. And that's where the real trap is. We convince ourselves that retiring early will automatically make everything better, when in reality the happiness we imagine often doesn't match the happiness we actually get. Now here is where it gets interesting, because this whole conversation isn't just about people investing too much. It actually swings both ways. On one side, you've got people who become obsessed with investing and feel guilty if every spare pound isn't being invested. They throw almost all their money into index funds, strip back their lifestyle, and convince themselves that sacrificing everything today is justified because it will help them retire early. But then there is the opposite end, people who invest far too little or don't invest at all and end up falling behind without realizing it. And it's not surprising because trying to work out how much you need to invest is incredibly difficult. There are so many unknowns. What you'll spend in the future, inflation, market returns. Nobody has perfect answers to any of it. But this uncertainty makes us question ourselves. And the knee-jerk reaction is usually the same. Better be safe, better invest more and more, just to make sure future you has a good life in retirement. Now, that level of precision and intense planning can work for some people. But as we talked about earlier, it also carries some real risks. If investing turns into a compulsion, something you feel you have to do constantly, then living for today slowly gets replaced by living entirely for the future. You end up in this strange limbo where you're always preparing for a better life that never quite arrives, because you never actually pause to enjoy the life you're in. Now, according to a study by Vanguard, the way people actually view retirement is shifting. Traditionally, retirement meant a clean break. One day you're working, the next day you've stopped completely. But that's not what most people want anymore. Vanguard found that among people who haven't retired yet, only 24% plan to stop working on a specific date and walk away entirely. Most people are planning something much more flexible. 27% want to reduce their hours at their current job. 21% say they'll mostly stop on a given date but keep a bit of work going. And 14% even plan to switch to a different job altogether. And the reasons for choosing a phased retirement are a mix of financial and emotional factors. A third, 33%, said they simply don't feel ready to retire completely. 27% said they would like to keep earning a bit to top up their income, and 24% said they want the social side of work. More broadly, the study found that retirement isn't just about hitting a financial number. It's also about being emotionally ready. Some people said retirement becomes possible once the money is sorted or when the big financial commitments disappear. Others said they will retire when they've had enough of work or start feeling pushed out. And some felt torn. They enjoy working and like the income, but they don't want to still be working when they feel too old. So for many, the solution is a gradual retirement. Participants said phasing out of work keeps a sense of purpose, offers social connection, and provides structure. Even if the work is lower paid, it's less stressful and gives them more independence and control. At the same time, there is a growing shift towards what you could call mini retirements. Instead of investing as aggressively as possible and sacrificing everything today so they can retire early in one big leap, more people are using their investments to take shorter breaks throughout their life. Traveling, exploring new hobbies, or simply stepping off the treadmill for a while. And honestly, none of this is surprising. We often forget that work can provide engagement, routine, social connection, and even a sense of purpose. For many people, the goal isn't to escape work altogether. It's to escape the version of work that makes them miserable. And don't get me wrong, I completely understand that we do have an investing crisis. Too few people invest, and many who do don't invest enough to build the kind of future they want. We absolutely need people to engage with long-term investing and take advantage of the opportunities it creates. But it has to be done in a balanced way, without becoming rigid, anxious, or obsessive. Because alongside that investing gap, we are also dealing with a growing mental health issue that's partly fueled by financial dysmorphia. This pressure to invest more and more, even when it's harming your quality of life. And studies reflect this disconnect. Standard Life found that many retirees overestimated how much money they need in retirement and ended up requiring less income than they expected. Imagine sacrificing your 30s and 40s, stripping back everything you enjoy, only to discover later that you could have invested less and still been perfectly secure. The truth is, you're never going to calculate the perfect investing number. Life is too unpredictable. So the more realistic approach is this: invest what you reasonably can, keep it sustainable, and don't forget to actually live in the present too. So how do you actually strike that balance? Well, the first step is to hit the subscribe button on this video. Now, on a serious note, if you're already thinking long term, you probably have a SIP or a workplace pension in place. These are designed to grow quietly in the background and stay untouched until you reach retirement age. And that's great for long-term security, but relying only on a pension can feel restrictive, especially if life throws something unexpected your way. or if you want more freedom before the traditional retirement. That's where a stocks and shares ISA becomes incredibly useful. Think of it like this: your SIP and workplace pension are your long-term safety net, money you're tucking away for your future self at 60 or 70. It compounds steadily for decades and gives you the stability later in life. But alongside that, you can invest in low-cost index funds through an ISA. By using both accounts side by side, you get the best of both worlds: the stability of a pension growing over time and the flexibility of an ISA for life's mini retirements, career pivots, or simply giving yourself breathing room. It lets you live a fuller life now while still planning for a comfortable traditional retirement. And in fact, this is exactly the approach I've taken myself. Is the reason I stopped investing purely to retire early and started investing for a life with more freedom along the way. Now, while the core principle of long-term investing is to let your money grow and avoid touching it, having flexibility doesn't mean constantly dipping into your portfolio. It's simply about giving yourself options, building a plan that doesn't lock every pound away until your 60s. With the stocks and shares ISA, for example, you can access your money if you genuinely need to. But the real aim is still the same: leave it to grow for as long as possible. You're following the long-term rule of staying invested. But you also have the peace of mind knowing you're not completely trapped. And to me, that's the sweet spot. A way of investing that lets you live your life in the present while still building a secure future. And the key to all of this is simple: stick to the main investing principles and keep your emotions in check. In fact, if you want to build stronger investing discipline, sign up to my free newsletter. You'll find the link in the description below. And in the meantime, check out this video next to find out whether dividend investing is actually better than good old index fund investing. I'll see you there, and remember to stay hooked on investing.